Life returned to some semblance of normal. If we had a routine, we got back into it. Having livestock and a farm to look after requires commitment and hard work. For me, it was rewarding and fulfilling to be with my horses whenever I could be, whether it was watching them eat grass in the summer or to take them out for a pleasant bareback ride, enjoying the day in nature's playground. Simba had the run of the yard all year except for the winter months, when he would spend a good portion of it in the barn, being a spoiled older horse. Dr. Doolittle came out once to check on the little guy, and she estimated his age to be 25 the year that Simba came to live with me. Well, she actually asked him how old he was, and that was the answer he gave her. She showed me once how to do a muscle test, and it uses the energy of your body and the energy from the body of the horse. You place your strongest hand over your belly button, touch the horse with your other hand, then you literally ask the horse to show you yes. This should cause your body to lean toward the horse. If it doesn't, you're doing it wrong. It requires a great deal of concentration on your part. I have to close my eyes and focus to feel the energy. Keeping your hands in place, you must ask the horse to show you no, so that you know the difference. A no answer will cause your body to sway back away from the horse. I tried this on my own horses, and once I got a no answer that felt more like a shove than a sway. Dr. Doolittle explained to me that this was how she had asked Simba how old he was. She just asked him to show her yes and no, then she went through the numbers until she got a yes answer. That summer, like most, Simba had the run of the yard and was only put in for the night. Oftentimes, it would not be unusual for my dad to go and let Simba out for his grazing in the yard time. The little horse had wormed his way into my dad's heart, too. Once our neighbor to the south called and said that he had a horse in his yard and was wondering if it might be one of mine. I laughed and said that it was Simba. I told the neighbor just to go out, point the direction of our farm, and say, "Simba, go home." The neighbor called back laughing because it had worked. Simba had turned around and walked back toward home. It wasn't the last time Simba would go visit the neighbors. They enjoyed his visits, petted him, and then sent him on his way. Donna came to the farm for coffee one day and said, "Simba's outstanding in his field." The statement held a double meaning. Not only was Simba outstanding, but he was also in the alfalfa field again. The friend whose dad I bought Buddy from was living up near Yorkton. She was having some trouble with her horse and asked if I would retrain him for her that spring. I agreed, and Diesel came to spend 5 months with me that year. Diesel was a 5-year-old black Morgan quarter-horse cross gelding with just enough white on him to be eye-catching. He stood an impressive 16 hands. He was started under saddle, but became hard to catch and would run off on his rider. I would work Diesel in my square corral in the barn that had been recently cleaned of the winter manure. Diesel loved to move and was very spirited. He would run circles around me in the corral for a long time. When I used my body language to make him stop, he would stop. But he would not face up and come see me. It took an hour the first day before Diesel would come to me willingly. Each day that I worked with him, he would run less and come buddy me up quicker. My goal was to build a relationship and trust with this horse before I made an attempt to ride him. The first day I saddled Diesel, I noticed he became tense as soon as I reached under his belly for the girth. I did up the cinch slowly and tightened it up slightly, then I walked him. We walked and grazed some more before I tightened the girth up just enough to keep the saddle on. I came to the conclusion that whoever had ridden him before had thrown the saddle on and then tightened it as tight as they could, causing him to be cinchy. I walked Diesel further until he relaxed, and only then did I mount up. Diesel did not buck, but he was a runner. Once I was in the saddle, he took off on me at a hard gallop. Riding Diesel reminded me of the thoroughbreds I had retrained. Someone had raced this horse for fun. I asked my friend about it later, and she confirmed what I suspected, but someone else had ridden him to these habits. I don't like riding a runaway, so I found a place on the yard where I could control Diesel to some degree by riding him in circles. He couldn't do a flying lead change and wasn't about to stop, but I was able to slow him to a trot to do circles in both directions so we wouldn't get too dizzy. His leads were off and rough to ride, but he wouldn't stop, so I rode at a gallop in circles until he got tired and slowed of his own accord. When I gave him the signal to stop using my weight aids and voice, he willingly stopped and stood breathing heavily. I then asked for a walk and proceeded to work on his turning and softness, which was stiff and unflexible. I left his training in a good place, walked him dry, and ended the session for the day. I did this same routine for 5 days in a row, but something was amiss with the way that he moved. I called Dr. Doolittle and asked her to come have a look at him. Dr. Doolittle came out, and we worked on Diesel's shoulders and back for an hour. She explained that because Diesel was saddled in such a rough manner, that he was tensing his shoulders in apprehension and had put them out of position to some degree. This horse was in pain, and it was a wonder he had done anything for me. Perhaps he was running from the pain. This knowledge made me feel bad. Dr. Doolittle showed me how to massage his shoulders and stretch out his front legs before and after I rode him, and told me to continue to saddle him the way that I had been. She gave me the heads up about a job I might want to apply for, and that I could use her as a reference. My rides on Diesel after that were much more relaxed and enjoyable. I applied for the job and was hired, even though I had no experience. Training came with the job, and I was required to wear dress clothes to work, which was totally out of character for me. I was going to be a file clerk at an accounting office for much longer than I ever expected to work there. Summer was ending. I was becoming attached to Diesel and enjoying every ride that I had on him, but it was time for Diesel to go home with his mom, and I said farewell. For the next year, I would enjoy my horses at leisure. I had Raisin, Fury, Nitro, and Simba. Nitro never went back to Leanne. She agreed to sell him to me for $1, but we never got around to signing a paper and exchanging that dollar. Nitro just lived with us now. I was following a story in my horse magazines about an art project that had been in the works for some years in the United States. It began with a gentleman named Charles who had followed up on a National Geographic story that was printed in 1977. The story was about an art project that Leonardo da Vinci had begun nearly 500 years before and never completed. I knew that Leonardo da Vinci was an artist, but until I read that article, I did not know that he had been commissioned to do a 24-foot horse sculpture in Italy. I will recount the story in my own words. Leonardo da Vinci was commissioned by the Duke of Milan to do a 24-foot bronze sculpture of a proud prancing horse to honor his father. Leonardo spent the last 17 years of his life working on this project. He got as far as making a clay rendition of the horse sculpture at its actual size, and the bronze was ready to go for him to cast it when war broke out in Italy. The Duke had to use the bronze for cannons, and the invading French archers used the clay sculpture for target practice. The clay sculpture was subsequently destroyed. Leonardo, I read, was heartbroken over the uncompleted work and died some years after. Charles, who had picked up on the National Geographic story, made it his life's ambition to complete Leonardo da Vinci's horse and present the finished sculpture to the city of Milan, Italy, as a gift from the American people. He created the LDVH1 Foundation to complete Leonardo's vision. This was the story I was following. In 1994, Charles passed away, but left a legacy and made the LDVH1 board members promise to complete the project. Professional artists were hired to recreate Leonardo's horse from his drawings, and the project was due to be completed in 1999. It would be titled Il Cavallo. Horses and art. What could be better than that? It would be the largest bronze horse sculpture in the world. I wanted to see it, but I had a sinking feeling that I would never get to Italy, and the article clearly stated that they were only making one. In January 2000, I excitedly opened my new Equus magazine because there was a new article on the LDVH project. I read the whole article and oohed and awed at the photos of the gargantuan bronze horse. The project coordinators had indeed presented the city of Milan with the bronze sculpture and had a grand unveiling in September 1999 that was well received. In the bottom corner of the last page of the article was a box titled American Models. I read with anticipation that Frederick Meyer Gardens in Grand Rapids, Michigan, had contributed to the project and purchased a second full-size model that was unveiled in October 1999. That's it! I'm going to see Leonardo da Vinci's horse. I spent the next few months saving every dime I could. I purchased a ticket to fly to Grand Rapids, Michigan for the first week of June. I did some computer research on my favorite breed of horses at the time, Friesians. There was a Friesian horse breeder near Grand Rapids, and I made contact with them. They invited me to visit them and their horses at the Friesian Horse Show in Detroit that week, and also to their farm while I was in Grand Rapids. I booked a room at a bed and breakfast in a Georgian revival home built in 1889 called Brayton House. It was priced the same as a hotel room, but I would get to experience some history while visiting for the week. With the tax season over and already 2 years working at the accounting office, it was no problem getting a week off to go on my excursion. I drove myself to the Regina airport, put my car in the car park for a week, and boarded a plane destined for Grand Rapids, Michigan. It was late in the evening by the time I arrived at Brayton House. The hostess and owner of the house was Phyllis Ball. She invited me into her private kitchen for a cup of tea and a bite to eat before she showed me to my room. I toured the house the following day. Brayton House was an impressive three-story home located on a calm and serene tree-lined street. The huge covered front step had welcoming white wicker chairs on it that I enjoyed sitting in and watching the squirrels play during the week I was there. Inside the house was most impressive. It was lavish. Hand-painted murals donned the entryway and up the curving staircase to go to the second floor. Hand-painted foil artwork graced the walls in the dining room where I ate breakfast each morning. It was a lovely home decorated with antiques dating back 100 years or more, and its elderly hostess was every bit as intriguing. Phyllis was a gem of a woman, and I felt honored to meet her, even if I was a guest and paying customer in her home. I spent the first day just making myself comfortable, relaxing and enjoying, having nothing to do but read a book and watch the squirrels play in the trees. Il Cavallo could wait one more day. The next day I hired a taxi to take me to Frederick Meyer Gardens so I could see Il Cavallo. At the entrance to Frederick Meyer Gardens is a huge sculpture with 3 horses rearing and galloping out of or over waves or a rock. It's stunning. There are many sculptures and beautiful things to see at Frederick Meyer Gardens. They have an indoor desert terrarium and a rainforest terrarium, all complete with birds and other small animals native to those habitats. I followed the tour guide for the indoor part of the tour, but it was the outdoor walk I was most looking forward to. There were miles of paths to walk on, many acres of the gardens. It was all neatly manicured and most lovely to see and experience. I walked out of the door of the main building expecting to see Il Cavallo, but the rolling hills and trees of the gardens hide the sculptures from your immediate view. Of course, I wanted to first go see the horse, and then I would tour the remainder of the gardens. I walked down the path indicated towards LDVH1. There are trees obscuring the path, and I had to walk around a small hill before the curve took me to an opening in the gardens. And there, standing in all its glory, surrounded by small hills and trees, was Il Cavallo. To my left there was an 8-foot bronze casting of Il Cavallo on a stand. You must walk a little further to experience the grandeur and immensity of Leonardo da Vinci's horse. I had a strange feeling come over me when I walked up to the bronze horse statue. It is so realistically made that it is easy to imagine the giant horse in motion, to hear its hooves ring on the stones beneath its feet, and feel the tremor it would cause. The horse is sculpted in motion, and when I stood near it and looked up, I could feel the movement even though it stands for all time in suspended animation. My childlike imagination was still alive within me. I was in awe, but never so happy that I made the decision to see it with my own eyes and experience the greatness of Leonardo's horse. I finished my tour of the gardens and marveled at all of the wonderful sculptures placed strategically throughout the landscape. I went back to touch Il Cavallo one more time and stand beneath it before I went back to Brayton House for the evening. The following morning, I boarded a bus for Detroit to attend the Frisian and Andalusian Horse Show. It was an hour-and-a-half bus ride to Detroit. I grabbed a bite to eat and gave the taxi driver the address of the facility where the show was being held and went to watch some beautiful horses at their best. I found the Frisian breeder people that I had contacted and introduced myself. They were elated that I had come and invited me to sit with them while another family member was showing one of their horses in a costume class. I spent the afternoon visiting with the Frisian horse breeders and learned what I could from talking to them and observing the horses themselves. They were large, beautiful black horses, and I wanted one, but their price tag was astronomical. I made arrangements to visit their farm and see their horses before I left for Canada. In the early evening hours, as the sun was setting, I took the bus back to Grand Rapids. 6 days go by rather rapidly when you want to take in a lot of sights. I was able to get to the beach of Lake Michigan one afternoon. I was amazed by the white sand and sights there. It was a great way to spend a relaxing afternoon. And I made one more trip back to see Il Cavallo before I left the United States. It was rainy and gloomy that day. On the last day of my visit, I found transportation and went to visit the Frisian breeders' farm and see their horses. Many of the horses on their farm had come directly from the Netherlands, where the breed originated. I was able to get a few photos of me with the Frisians. I loved their big, friendly personalities. There was one smaller 3-year-old Frisian gelding that I was particularly fond of. He was just sweet and lovable. He was 15.3 hands high, which is a smaller Frisian. He had just started training, and his price tag was $15,000, far more than I would ever be able to afford for a horse. I have this lovely photo of me and 2 of their foals. They were so friendly and wanted to be petted and loved. That was an awesome moment to remember. I drove back home to Swift from Regina in a downpour. That night, the small town of Vanguard, southeast of Swift received a record rainfall of 13 inches in just a few hours. The town was flooded. I returned to work at the accounting office and was excited to share my experience with my family, friends, and coworkers. It was a good summer. Chad and Jamie now had 2 little boys. The oldest was 2, and their youngest was a few months old. I enjoyed being an auntie. I rode often during the summer months in the evenings and on the weekends when I wasn't working. I liked being able to enjoy my horses at leisure with no pressure from anyone.